Welcome to this edition of the $1 Million Mastermind Podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. So if I'm going to kind of mention some takeaways that occur to me and that I would like people to be thinking about, first of all, with kids. If you got kids, we think about educating kids and they come home with good grades. But if these little suckers never learn how to make money, or they don't even have it in their mind about developing skills about there is a real world out there. In that real world, you have to make money. And so, like I may have money, I may have a big car, but you don't. That's my house. That's my car, And so don't worry. A friend of mine said his son came and said, Dad, people, the kids at school, it's like, they're always talking about how I'm spoiled and how I'm, rich with nice cars and nice houses. My friend told him, he said, son, that's not a problem for you at all. He said, you got nothing.
Yeah, that's mine, not yours.
That's mine. It's like Nick Saban says to the after they win national championships, he has a big team meeting, and they celebrate, all the team in there, and celebrate the victory, and have the graduating seniors get up and go out and say, you guys, national championship. They go out of the room, and he said, now you guys, you got nothing. He said that was their championship. You got to go. You got to go win your own.
Yep.
And that year starts right now. And so, that's important. And to create experiences so somehow, some way, the light bulb can go on in their mind about making money. And that's a good thing, and because it speaks to being independent. And if you can get them to correlate working hard, making money, being independent, because I can do things with it on my own, that's going to be as important as any other thing happens to them in education. Because once you get degrees, when you go to class, we got to think about this thing logically. They're loading up their heads with information they're probably not ever going to use much. And if they do use it, it's because they're to the degree that they're motivated, to do a bunch of things. And then they'll tap into that educational base. But if they're not really motivated, they're just looking for a job and going through like, you hear people, they get married and their spouse, some of the females out there, my husband was a real go-getter until we got married.
Right.
And now what an incredible dud, like what happened to the man I married and everything. So the thing is, if you can work on that, even, I talk about this all the time, even the lion, female lion, the mother has to teach the cubs to hunt. They don't hunt naturally, they get the taste of the kill and like all of that gets it into activate those natural impulses and everything. So hopefully we're doing that, but also I don't want to get too far away from this whole thing was kicked off from your love of music. Wanting a boombox.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I share too, my daughter, she just turned 11. She'll be 12 here in a couple of months. And right when she turned 11, all of her friends in school, fifth grade, they're getting cell phones. She goes, Dad, I want a cell phone. And I've told my son, who's a little bit older, the same thing, a few years prior. I said, yeah, those are $1,000. And they both said to me, well, you have $1,000. I said, yeah, I do. You don't. You can go figure out a way to make that money. And it was really interesting. I don't ever want to push business on my kids. I did the little cash flow, Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. I said, hey, you go work for somebody, work for yourself, start a business, go invest. And my son, he decided to come work hourly at our company, just doing things around the office. He worked his butt off for an entire summer, made that money. My daughter, she's wired a little bit differently. She goes, well, could I do a business? I go, sure, you can start a business. What do you like to do? Well, I love to bake cookies. So she started a little cookie baking business and then found a way. We really worked a little marketing plan. She sent these cute little emails to people and tracked the return, and about over about that same time period that my son had spent, she made her $1,000, and now they both have their cell phones, but they earned them. There's a value that they see there, and there was a real proudness, that they had, that they earned that in their own way that they loved.
And what you've done there is you struck the fire of internal motivation. There's a carrot stick motivation that will allow you to get through life just because you have to do certain things. And,
Yep.
do this, you get an award. That's all external. But the greatness comes from internal motivation. When you're following your gut and things that get you excited and that you want to do,
Yep.
because those are the people that do the extras. And what you were talking about there is lighting that fire of internal motivation. Like, I can accomplish things, and also the thing about the idea of education, we're trying to get people, the kids to grow up and have some confidence and be able to think in their feet, stand in their feet, know how to solve problems, and it's not the lack of education, it's the lack of critical thinking, be able to, problem solving and all. But
Yep.
if they don't have the motivation, they're just sitting in there playing video games all the time. Where's that? What's that going to lead to? And
Yep.
so hopefully a career as a professional athlete, because they've got plenty of time to play video games
Right.
when they're not traveling or actually on the field. So anyway, the other thing that I like to point out is you took advantage of an opportunity to get some real world skills from that painting opportunity, because a lot of things come
Yes.
along and we don't take advantage of them. But if you somehow get it in your head, then I'm going to need some practical skills. Mark Cuban is really good at explaining this, because he talked about all the jobs he did along the way, he had it in his mind to accumulate skills. So
Yes.
mine wasn't on what I'm doing in there. It's like, I want to learn this business. I want to learn what they do, how they do it. And I want to get, develop my skill set, practical skill set, customer service, solving problems, getting to know people, building relationships, competition, things like that, and figure out how things work and how you turn around slumping businesses or get out of a slump. He was using all of that, and that set him up for incredible success at a young age. And we can use those same. The purpose of this podcast is to let people hear from real world successful people who've used real world knowledge, not just dead information out of a book that somebody has heard from somebody else and really have no clue. It's like second and third hand information. And it's not from the horse's mouth, the person who actually has used it and done something with it. And when they say these things, it sounds different. It rings a bell.
Yeah.
It inspires.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas before, it's just like, okay, I remember to say that, But, and so you did that, and you had, I don't know what other kind of education you got at school, what your degree and everything was, but you went back to that real world experience. And it really doesn't matter where you start, Matt, does it? Because what business you had started on. The main thing is that you started and you got something where you could get going on, because you can always morph into other businesses, can't you?
Totally. Yeah. No, the businesses can pivot and change direction, and you can jump laterally into other businesses as well. So, no, it's been great. But I think the big lesson there, and I mean, I talk to my kids about it, is the whole theory versus practice. Like, hey, you're gonna learn something. Like my son, he's not fond of math. He's like, Dad, why do I have to sit here and do these math problems on paper? This is stupid. I'm never going to use this. And then we actually took him out on a painting proposal once, and I'm like, hey, here's where you use measuring the area of a triangle, or measuring area, something like that. And he goes, oh, okay, now it makes sense. And he goes, well, this makes more sense. He goes, I love this. This is fun. He goes, I just don't want to sit here and study something that is going to be seemingly useless. But yeah, it's just when you get in and you do it, and you get the reps. I'm fluent in Spanish. I spent a semester over in Spain while I was in college. And I tell people, I spent 10, 11 years through middle, high school, college, learning in class, a little bit of Spanish out of the textbook, and then you get thrown into that environment where you have to do it. You have to use it or you don't eat, literally. You'll learn it pretty fast, and it just sticks, and you learn it at a different kind of level.
Yeah, I've got a friend I've been in business with for decades, and he studied Spanish high school, Wake Forest University, but one summer he got some kind of internship or something down in Colombia.
Yeah.
And he said, they drop you off the bus in the middle of Colombia, and you got the name of this little family that you're going to be staying with for the summer. And that's it. And you got to learn
Figure it out.
You got to figure it out. But when he came back, he turned into he became a translator for the university. They used it all because they had all these international forums and this, that, and the other. And but he said, without that trip to Colombia, would not have happened. Real world experience is what we're talking about. And I remember, I got a degree in building construction from Georgia Tech. I didn't know how to build a birdhouse, but I had the degree in building construction. But where I got the education was when I got out on the job, and we're building houses, and it's like all of a sudden you learn what building construction is all about. The real world. And so as you came through, how did you get into the mortgage business? You would you say expanded, or was that a mark of insanity, or just being fed up with the paint thing, or it's like, I got to find something new, or what drove that?
It was funny. I got in and out of it pretty quick. It was a short period of my life, but I was chasing the seemingly sexy dollar, right? So like I said, made a bunch of money in college, and a lot of the group that we were running around with in the college painting company, like, they were all very motivated by money, and the kids that ended up being successful and made it to the end of the summer in this program, like, they all did well, made good money. So it was just very appealing. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I had to learn how to make my own. So I'm like, man, you can make good money in the business. And then I bought a house, right? So never should have bought a house. I was, like I said, 6 figures in debt. I got a mortgage that the bank actually paid me to buy a home. So I'm already upside down in it. But the guy that did my mortgage, he was a young, friendly, very successful guy. So when we sat down, he's like, hey, Matt, it looks like you've done very well for yourself in the painting business. He didn't talk to me at all about debt, right? He wanted to sell me the mortgage. He goes, you might really like this business. So as we're going through the process of him helping me buy my home and do the mortgage on the home, he's like, hey, why don't you come hang out with me one day? I'll kind of show you what I do, right? So takes me out to lunch, a little bit of wining and dining, right? Come to find out, possibly trying to, recruit me to his mortgage team. But, it just looked very appealing. It looked one way from the outside. It looked like you just kind of hung around, ate lunches all day,
right.
Went to a networking event, had drinks, and made a bunch of money. And then when I actually ended up working in the business, I worked for a very B.C. paper, telemarketing. You're doing 200 phone calls a day.
Yeah.
And they were really taking advantage of people. I asked too many questions, because again, I'm a math guy. So I'm like, you're consolidating all of their debt into this supposed home equity, right? That we find out a lot of them really didn't have anyway, and lowering their payments, but you're spreading them out over 30 years. So I just remember a guy says, do you want to ask questions or make money? You can't do both. He's like, just do what we tell you. Do what this trainer, the internal company trainer tells you to do, and you'll make money. If not, get out. And then I left that business, and I went to the totally opposite side. Like I said at the beginning of the interview here, very conservative bank, where I come in there and I go, hey, are we consolidating debt and equity and doing this and pushing value on appraisals? I didn't know what any of this stuff meant. Yeah. And they're like, whoa, what are you talking about? That's not okay. And I go, okay, this business isn't what I thought it was. And, I got, like I said, I got fired. And I'd never go back to that side of things.
For those of you who are sick and tired of fooling around and are dead serious about wanting to move up fast, I've got something especially for you. I've combined the best insights from over 40 years in business and making $70 million in income and compressed them into a free webinar. That's right, it's a free resource. If you want to find out exactly what the concepts are that I use in coaching million-dollar earners, register now at WeidellOnWinning.com. You'll discover the 5-part framework used by so many to reach their financial, personal, and professional goals. You can find that link in this episode's show notes. Well, and this is the difference between a racket and a service. And people that are, the time that you need to ask questions is when you're the client and you need your full skeptical thing, because they can talk. If they're talking fast and they're confusing you. It's not by accident, it's by design. And you should never get into financial products that you don't understand the basic. And if the person cannot explain those to you simply and clearly, it's not any place you want to be. And that's not the kind of person you want to do business with. No. So what did you found yourself, how old are you at this point?
41.
And you went back into the painting, you're saying, at that stage?
Yeah. So I was, I painted the 4 years in college, and then it was a little less than 2 years kind of transitioning out of college. And then, 2005 was when we founded our painting company. And then that grew, that took off pretty quickly. Again, I love the marketing. So was really exploring creative and different ways to market. Then I overlaid the awards steps and kind of that process and framework that I use to win awards. And we've had our company now. This is I believe our 18th year in business.
So talk about creative and different ways of marketing. What did you learn about ways because one thing about learning new ways is it keeps you stimulated. You know what I'm saying? It's like keep doing the same old thing over. One of the things that people, when you're running a business, the hardest thing, I heard this a long time ago, and I still think it's probably true. The hardest thing you have to do is to keep yourself really motivated, because and what follows from that is to keep your team really motivated. But you're dead out of the door if you don't walk out of the door super motivated. And so one thing that keeps you as a leader motivated is doing things quicker, better, faster, more fun. And there's something really invigorating about an exciting new idea that actually works. So talk about some of the ways you found a market that gave your business an edge.
I tell companies kind of two things is a couple of things is marketing. In my eyes, it's all about having a message, a method, a media to literally interrupt a conversation that somebody's already having, right? So you're doing daily life, you're driving your car around town, heading to work, whatever it is, you got your eye and your phone and your social media, and you're having this interaction with the world, and boom, you've got to be, as a company, something or someone that interrupts that message. So a couple of ways to do it. Initially, I use the whole R&D, right, which is rip off and duplicate. So I jump into the painting business and I said, what are other companies doing, right? So back in 2005, they were competing for space in the phone book, right? Believe it or not. And that was funny how that literally changed right before my eyes. They were dropping, signs and flyers and door hangers. There weren't too many that were knocking on doors. I did a lot of door knocking. And I tracked the return on that. So there's, the R&D, there's rip off and duplicate. And then there's like, hey, what is your industry doing? And then what is something totally different, totally off the wall that everybody says is crazy? This would never work. Like, I love trying stuff like that. I tell people I'll try anything once. And as I was knocking on doors and I really established some good metrics, right? I knew if I spent this much time and energy, I would land this much business, like literally down to the dollar. I was driving around town, right? So I'm just driving to the bank one day, and I would drive this one route, and I'd see a guy dressed up like the Statue of Liberty standing on the corner, shaking a sign. And I'm like, that is the stupidest thing. Like I thought to myself, I'm like, that is the dumbest thing. I can't believe people do this. Who would do business? Like, I thought all these things. Who would do business with a company like that? This guy's embarrassing himself. He's dressed up like a Statue of Liberty. And then it kind of clicked. It's like, yeah, you just said all the things that I'm now telling you should try, right? Like on your podcast. So my wife and I were joking one day, and she's like, Matt, you always say you'll do anything once. And I said, what do we have to lose? Like, let's give it a try. It was literally Statue of Liberty. And then home builders back kind of in the building boom, they had like high school kids standing on the corner. So went down to a local high school, and they had a school dance team, like a hip hop dance team. And I said, hey, is anybody looking for a job? I need somebody that is, doesn't mind being in front of a bunch of people and wants to just go dance on the corner, hold a sign, make some money. This kid raises his hand, and his name was Ben. We put him on the corner between 4 and 5 o'clock. And I'm out doing estimates. My wife, Emily's working in the home office. And she goes, Matt, the phone is blowing up. She goes, why is everybody calling us between 4 and 5 o'clock? The phone never rings between 4 and 5 o'clock, And I said, well, Ben's out on the corner. And I said, make sure we're asking people why they're calling, where they heard of us. And it was that. So, I mean, just something crazy like that, totally landed. We actually just recently did something super interesting in the roofing business too, that I'd love to share. I don't know if you have any, roof contractors that are listening.
We might have some. Usually, you have in any industry, you have people that are thinking about it, in it, or trying to get out of it. So the thing is, in any industry, you got people going in. That would be great. They're in it. They want to do better. Or they're saying, how can I migrate out of this? Or how can I flip this into something else? So, yeah, we have people that are interested in roofing.
No, and that's awesome. So, I mean, but, depending on on your listener base, you're like, well, Matt, that's great. Nice story. I don't do anything that has to do with residential paint contracting in neighborhoods where, the method in which you're interrupting a conversation, it doesn't matter in my industry, right? I'm in B2B sales or, whatever it is. So I really, I created a framework. I tell people, I said, look, there's no magic bullet. I don't go tell everybody, hey, go knock doors. In real estate, like you can knock doors as a new realtor, but that I didn't find for me was the best method. But what I tell people is find that one thing. And I think as entrepreneurs, we get very impatient. So we're constantly, as we're doing life and business and we're trying to interrupt a conversation with a customer, now we have, I was getting more phone calls from marketing companies trying to sell me marketing than I was customers wanting to do business with me when I started my business. Oh, hey, we can do your SEO. We can do your whatever. So you're getting constantly pulled in a million different directions. And I say, look, find out who your customer is. Think about that demographic, that avatar. Where do they spend time? Where is their attention? And then how can you creatively, uniquely, differently get into that conversation in front of them and come up with one method, right? So for me, knocking on doors, that was my one method. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to spend 90% of my time knocking on doors. And just because 30 people slam the door in my face, I mean, I've had doors slammed in my face. I've had dogs bite me. I've had guns brandished, like weapons brandished at me, all kinds of stuff, right? But you just keep going and do it 100 times, do it 200 times, and you'll start to see some consistent patterns. But we get distracted and we give up too easily. So, I would say to anybody, any industry, you've got a client, their attention is somewhere, find a way to interrupt it, and it's guess and check. You might try to interrupt the conversation 200 times and get 0. Try it another 100. Tried another 100. Maybe you get zeros again. Okay, maybe now you need to try a different method, but you've got to establish something tangible that you can track.
Thanks for listening to the $1 Million Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at whitealumwinning.com. Thanks for listening.